Welcome to the Midwest Moguls Show, where we talk all things business, real estate, and entrepreneurship. Let's dive into today's episode and make business enjoyable again. Welcome back to the Midwest Moguls Show. It is Joe and myself here in the podcast studio today. Pretty much a plus one episode. We don't have any guests in here today, so we are just going to talk a little bit about the psychology and some of the marketing that we do, some of the conversations that we have. In addition to that, Joe and I were talking pre-recording of what to do on those days that your schedule's not jam-packed full of miscellaneous things. Mm-hmm. How do you remain productive in those moments? So I guess we'll just jump right into it, and we'll first handle the topic of productivity, what to do on the boring days or the days that aren't full of appointments or making offers or whatever the case is. And I guess my first thought when it comes to that, because everyone has those days, it's a constant battle, so to say. And obviously in the summertime, it might not be as bad as what it would be in winter months, or at least for us in Wisconsin here. It's a little bit slower come November, December, January, and then it typically picks up after that. But what I would recommend on that side is there's things that are going on within the business or within the follow-up process of, okay, I'm not talking to homeowners today, but to make those conversations easier with homeowners, generally you need to improve skills in some way, shape, or form. We're all guilty of that. So whether it's sales skills or question and answer or pitching a new product, novations, whatever the case is, you can drill down on some of those. And then also the follow-up process, not necessarily like, oh shit, I need to be reaching out to people today, but what more, like, can I write? Like, we are a recent subscriber of Resimply, like the CRM system for you guys that might be watching or listening. Resimply has a lot of automations in there that allow text, allow email campaigns, allow ringless voicemails. So what I do, like specifically today, what I've been working on is this morning, and then we'll kind of touch on the in the psychology component as well, how it all meshes together. But I've been typing out some emails, basically just informational emails, engaging content. So people that interact with us, we're not just like another company out there. We're actually a relatable person. So a lot of the emails are like, Katie just hit the jackpot yesterday. Yeah. So like that's what the first email I typed up this morning is like, I can't believe she won $5,600. It's like, well, that's kind of a captivating subject line. And then people might dive into it, read a little bit further. And kind of the pitch in the email was, hey, we have a little bit of extra money to buy some properties. Nice. Reach out if you would have any interest in selling. And although it's kind of like a gimmicky sort of thing, it's still a fun way to capture some attention, capture some knowledge. And that's where, like in those moments that you're like, oh shit, I really, like today on the schedule, we're going to go out and shoot some video stuff later this afternoon. But there's no appointments in the calendar. Yeah. And it might fill up with phone calls and miscellaneous shit as it normally does. But how can you still make it productive? Yeah. And that's what I would recommend. And it's like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you have a little bit different overview on things. So
I guess like from my perspective is, there's a lot of things that it seems like needs to get done. But at the same time, I look at it as how can I be productive in getting the right things done? And kind of like you said, is those things that lead up to the closes and the sales and everything like that. So, going through some scripts and going through the, writing like you were doing, drip campaigns and things like that. I think that's stuff that during the downtime is, tedious, but it does need to get done. And it's a good time to work on those things because you have nothing else that are going to be, I guess, popping up. You're not getting a whole lot of phone calls that are going to stop you in your tracks. So I think my biggest thing, obviously, it's just trying to be productive in the right way and working towards those goals and like those deadlines that you're trying to actually work on every single day. But yeah, from, I guess, when it comes to just figuring out what is that one thing that is going to push you, in the right direction towards those goals and everything, that's always the hardest part for me. And I think it just honestly, I think I just for me personally, just take a little bit of time, sit back, maybe do 10-minute meditation,
Yeah.
clear the head, and just start kind of thinking of all the things that you're trying to achieve and what are the next steps and tasks that you can kind of do to push that needle forward.
Yeah. And when you were talking, it had me thinking.
Hmm.
And we look at almost such a small picture of like what action can I take today that will lead to one more conversation
Right.
or two more conversations or whatever, versus like what action can I take today that might lead to 20 more conversations in the future, even if it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
delayed
Mhm.
conversation of 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And that's where I think on even the content side of things, and I know we talked about this with Derek, but
Mhm.
what has me thinking of, or what it has me thinking of is like for you today,
Mhm.
okay, not a super busy day, not super chaotic, super crazy,
Right.
but what would stop you from going to, like, say, that house on Randall that we have
Mhm.
right now that hasn't sold or whatever the case is, doing like a selfie video on your phone, and maybe
Yeah.
you post it, maybe you don't post it,
Right.
but it's like, hey, this is Joe with CB Home Solutions, and maybe like pitching a real in the life advertisement of such,
Yeah.
and then just posting it, or we can run it as an advertisement. So then instead of a 1-to-1 conversation, it results in 1 to 1,000 people or
Right.
2,000 people. And it's like, hey, here's the downfalls of flipping houses.
Mhm.
We're still actively buying, but this house that we have is just been sitting here for the last
Right.
couple months. We thought we priced it properly.
Mhm.
Of course we didn't. It's sat through the holidays. Now we're still looking for more property to buy, but
Right.
if you have a house that's interested in whatever, and
Mhm.
kind of go from there with the pitch. So I feel like even that it's pushing outside your comfort zone because you not necessarily have
Right.
done that, but getting used to the fact of, hey, I want to have a little bit broader impact if that's something of interest.
Mhm.
Here's what I need to do in order to take that step. And maybe it'll take you 10 different times to record it and take you an hour long. And then as you start chipping away and you get more and more used to the camera
Mhm.
and used to staying in front of people, it slowly brings it down.
Right.
And honestly, from what I found, our first video ad that we ever ran, it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. But people related to that because it's like,
Right.
it was uncut. We didn't edit it at all. It was
Mhm.
just me at a property that we owned in Kimberly. I set the phone in a freaking kitchen cabinet, so it was
Are you
echoey.
serious?
Yeah, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing,
Right.
but I just kind of made the pitch of, hey, we're in a property that we recently bought
Mhm.
that we're in the process of remodeling. I don't know if you guys have a similar property to this, or you're going through a scenario
Mhm.
of this, or that. If you're interested in selling, fill out the form down below, or
Yeah.
click on the website, fill out the form, and learn a little bit more. But I think that would be beneficial to even start doing that, because
Right.
then it bridges the gap of, okay, we're talking about content production.
Mhm.
That's probably the easiest form,
Right.
because you're just basically pitching, and then providing value and telling people what we did, and you can pretty much just walk through and shoot from the hip on that side of things. So
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know, that's, but like in days that you're not busy, I always think, okay, I'm going to start chipping away at, maybe it's some miscellaneous task list that you have, but normally with the list, they always get pushed to the side. Even though you have
Right.
things to do, you're like, I don't know if I really want to do those today.
Mhm.
But what would be a way to scale the one-to-one conversations to one-to-many?
I like that, and I think that's a good kind of way to look at it is if you're not even sure, okay, I have, there were some tasks that I had, but now I don't have as many
Yeah.
to do, trying to figure out which one or what type of things you can kind of start focusing on and working on that is
Mhm.
gonna basically provide a 10x
Correct.
result where you're touching not just a one person, you're not just doing a follow up trying to figure out the scripting to talk to this one
Correct.
seller, you're figuring out what's going to work to talk to 20, 30 different sellers,
Mhm.
and also reach out to those. So I think that's a good way to kind of look at it, because I think you definitely, like, in the slower time of season, and when you just kind of get in I guess a slump where
Yeah.
you're not really sure where to go.
Correct.
It definitely helps to have, even like talking, like Car and I just talking, having someone to talk to and just figure out, okay, let's just take a quick
Yeah.
pause and figure out what are we doing right now, and how can we at least just start moving in the right direction, and just figuring out what that one thing is to just accomplish today.
Yep.
And once you accomplish that, then move on to the next thing and the next thing. But really just, I don't know, I think a lot of times people get in their own head,
Oh, without a
and
doubt.
it like stops the creative like thinking. And I don't know why that is, but it just seems like,
Well, you become overwhelmed, I think. I think
Yeah.
overwhelm does that to everyone. And you're like, oh shit, and it's the perception of, oh, I need to do all these things. Do you realistically need to do them? Maybe, maybe not. But it's like if you have a dedicated time almost to that creativity.
Yeah.
Because I think what we do as business owners, in the sense, like we're each individual business owners, is you start sucking that creativity out of the business. You're like, hey, I'm just going to do what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And although that it definitely works, you still need the creative component to fill in those gaps and get you through the discouraging times, because it is like, for some reason with this business, you could do one deal a month and you're like, holy shit, like I never thought that was possible. And then you start doing 2 or 3 a month and you're like, damn, this is crazy.
Right.
And then you get to a certain level and you're like, oh my gosh. Like, even if you're doing, like, for us, maybe we do 5 deals in a month or 6 deals or 4 deals or 3 or whatever the case is, but you still almost feel like you're not hitting this certain threshold of achievement. And then you're like, well, fuck, like, what am I doing wrong now?
Why do you think that is, though? Like, is it because we're like, you might hold yourself at a standard, or you set, like, say you set a goal for, because I know in the beginning we set goal for, okay, let's get 3 deals a month.
Yep.
And we've achieved that.
Yep.
But yet we still are like,
you're trying to
not satisfied in a way. Like, we feel like we're still failing.
Yep.
Like, I question that all the time. I'm like, why is it that we're still having that like feel of stress or anxiety of like not doing enough and not doing the right thing? And that's something
that's a good question. Yeah. Now that it has me thinking, to a certain extent, I think some of it's healthy because it keeps you driving and pushing forward. But then there's also I think the end result that we're hoping for is definitely not the reality of what it is.
Right.
So we're like, we have this all built up, and anyone who's listening might be able to relate to this, but they're like, shit, if I make $500,000 in a year, or if the business does, or if I make $1 million or whatever, it's going to get me this much. And then it doesn't. Then you're like, well, shoot, like, now what? Yeah, it's like you start reevaluating things and doing things. And that's where I think if you find what keeps me driving forward is the ultimately the creativity side of things, and like pursuing this, not necessarily what's not been done before, but how to add our own component into things, and then just seeing how it turns out. And I don't know, it's such a hard balance.
Yeah.
Because I think even the people who do 10 flips in a month, they're probably struggling with the same thing. It's like, oh shoot, we did that. Now what?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that. That's kind of what I'm still trying to figure out on my side. It's like, what do we want this to result in? How do we get it to that point? And of course, you need to make money. But how do you have the passion that lies with it? And some days are obviously a lot better than others. Some days are miserable.
Yeah, some days are just, like pulling your own teeth out. And
oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
It's terrible. What do you think is the cause of kind of like the discouragement that comes with it? That comes with achievement, I should say.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to, you get so focused on maybe hitting the goal that you kind of take the excitement and like the fun that you're trying to also have along the way. And for me, when I go through a day and I'm just, having for whatever reason, like I'm just enjoying it, I'm having fun, like I'm having interesting conversations and things like that. Like those days, I'm like, wow, that was a really good day. I really enjoyed that day. I might not have gotten, a deal maybe locked up, but I made a lot of like progress in a positive way. Plus I enjoyed like just emotion of going through it. And maybe that's like kind of the thing is, you have to enjoy the process and have fun throughout that process. I think so many of us, and I'm guilty of it too, is you just put so much weight on it and so much like stress of like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, instead of saying almost like, how can I enjoy this while I'm still like, I'm getting these things that I don't really want to do, but how can I still enjoy it? And kind of bringing like that inner child, I guess, back, because that's where, I mean, for both of us, like when we have, you know, fun conversations, we
Yeah.
have people coming in here, like we're just
super enjoyable.
super
Yeah, you're in like a
enjoyable.
flow state of
Yeah.
sorts.
And I think that's where we kind of like then get out of that, because then we go back to the computer and we're
Yeah.
starting to, you know, do different tasks and things, but we kind of turn off that creativity and like that happy kind of go get it kind of attitude, I guess. And you're just like, oh, well, now I have to like just kind of shut my brain off and just get through this stuff. And I don't know, it seems like sometimes we just put the pressure on ourselves and almost make it like tell ourselves, whether it's subconsciously or not, that you know, I can't really enjoy like doing these things. I had to, you know, just get it done and over with. And then you almost like tell yourself that you're going to do it, but it's not going to be enjoyable. But I think we just need to kind of bring that kind of liveliness, I guess, when it comes to doing certain tasks and things like that, and just see the joy of like, hey, I should be very grateful for that opportunity that I have right now. And then what I'm doing, not everybody has that, you know, going for them. And I think when it comes down to it, it might just be just going back to and being grateful and going through the gratitude and everything like that. But I don't really know. Like that's something that I'm still working on and figuring out. And if anybody knows, you know,
drop a comment down below.
Some insight on that. Yeah. But I have been like reading Slight Edge.
Yeah.
And I only got like, I think I'm like on the third chapter. So not too far, but I'm just starting it out, and it's already kind of opening up my mind where, you know, you're not going to be happy all the time, or not going to be, you know, motivated all the time. But if you have a philosophy and you're sticking to, this is like the reason why I'm doing these things, if it's strong enough, that's what's going to push you through those tough times and those, you know, boring days and things like that, and show you, okay, you know, your philosophy is to just, you know, change people's lives and to make a difference or whatever it may be. But if you have that, that's going to make the actions, I guess, you're going to take your philosophy and incorporate in the actions, and those actions are going to create results. And at the end of the day, like if you hit every single one of those throughout, or that also correspond to your philosophy, it makes it a way more enjoyable day, because you know it was true to what you believe in and what you're trying to strive for. So that's something that I'm trying to slowly incorporate in my daily routine and everything like that. And just staying consistent with that, because it's so easy to just get lost or go for a week and you're thinking about it, and then you go back into the kind of cycle of, okay, you know, it worked that week, but I got a busier day or busier week this time, and you know, you forget about it. But I think if you just consistently stay on top of it, and I think it's just making a conscious effort of not falling into the trap of just the repetitiveness and going into that, I guess.
What's like a slump of sorts.
Yeah.
And then you just, I don't know, like it seems as if when we have conversations that lead to new discoveries, or even just like having conversations like this.
Right.
Okay, for whatever, you're sitting in your office, you're just like, fuck, like I don't know what to do next. I'm a little confused. I'm a little uncertain on things. What is the best next step? Whoops, sorry. But with that, I think in and of itself, having those conversations, whether it's with the two of us, and that's why I think having an environment that you can openly have the conversation, it stems to more creativity and more resourcefulness. And talking to other people, like I was having a conversation with Josh this morning, and he's like, they're building out a more or less a proof of concept for private lending. So it's like, hey, here's our past deals. Here's what we've done. Here's the projections. Here's where we actually hit. This is how the investor capital was protected, so on and so forth. Kind of building that out. I'm like, well, that's a huge thing that could be done.
Right.
I know we had discussed that in the past, and we put together like a past deal sheet, but actually putting that on paper and in something that someone could easily look at and grasp the concept of, okay, what does it mean to actually lend money in real estate?
Right.
Or earn a rate or return in real estate? Do we have anything for that right now that would explain it other than having a conversation with someone? Not really. So is that something that either one of us could work on? Definitely.
Yeah,
Because it's
definitely.
like but prior to even having that conversation with him, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of that. So I think the conversations definitely stem a little bit more creativity. And then for the people who aren't in the position to have conversations or have coworkers or who are doing this on their own, maybe it's just reaching out to someone that you know that's in the business or in a like kind business, see what they're doing, see how things are going, and just kind of pick their brain for a little bit on the different nuances of the business or business in general.
Right. Or even like what I've done is honestly, this also sometimes helps too, is talking to someone that just talking to anybody like off the street, or just
Correct.
talking to your spouse that might not have, all the knowledge of what you do. Because sometimes it actually helps to have that outside,
Very much.
basically look at things. Because I talked to like my fiance Grace, and she gives me a lot of different insights that I don't see. And I think that helps out, because you might talk to another realtor or another investor, and they, have their kind of way that they looked at it. But when it comes to someone that has no idea, like they just spit out whatever they want or any type of information. Usually it's very helpful, because it's things that you just, for whatever reason, maybe put on blinders, never really thought about it. But it helps to have someone that just, thinks of it from a different perspective and doesn't know as much of, like, I guess the risk of everything, or the fears and everything like that. So a lot of times I get a lot of just helpful information. She's like,
Oh,
well, why don't you just do this? I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I just do that? Like that makes a lot of sense. Like, I don't know why I never thought about it. She's like, yeah, why don't you just, instead of trying to make your schedule like that, like just work on those 3 things and then move on to whatever else. And it's like, I never really thought about that, or never, like, it's just things that from an outsider's perspective, it can make a huge difference. So even just talking to a spouse or a friend that doesn't maybe even know anything, it just helps to like kind of almost vent in a way of,
I know.
Hey, I got all this stuff going on. Just want to hear your 2 cents on what your thoughts are.
Or in just seeing, like, I know I call people up at random, and I'm just seeing what they're up to. Like, I have no motives to the conversation, but it gets you out of that rut of,
it does.
like, fuck, like, this is just not going anywhere. Like, today it feels extremely unproductive. And like, that's why even shooting this podcast, like, first off, we need to shoot one. But second off, it allows us to have conversations like this that can lead to further information. We can get this out in front of a lot more people than what we would normally do. And it's an open and honest conversation about what we're currently going through, which might be valuable, which might not be valuable. I don't really know. But then just like kind of transitioning the topic, because we'll keep this podcast a little bit shorter, of when we're having those when we're having those conversations with the owners and like the psychology behind it. And I guess it's very similar to what we were just discussing of, okay, taking an outsider's perspective, looking into the business, looking into the information of providing the different resources, providing the different options for these owners to make them comfortable enough to move forward. And I think content definitely helps with that. They can compare you to the next person. And like I was telling you the other day, like, we're having conversations with someone who they were doing a lot of research for a long amount of time, and they decided to go a specific route, and great. It's amazing. But it does, I think, as investors, we discount people actually doing their research. We think, hey, they're going to respond to a cold call or a letter or a text or an online form or whatever the case is. But a lot of people, especially when it comes to their house, do a shit ton of research. And I don't know what you found with your conversations, but how do those normally go depending upon the lead type? Do they do a lot of research before reaching out, or what has that thought process been like for you, or experience been?
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, it's really a mixture of everything, where, some people, they don't do any sort of research other than picking up a postcard that we sent them. They call us, and I go on that walkthrough and able to lock it up, because they're in such a, usually those individuals are more in a rush. Now the individuals that may have a little bit more time in their hand, or they have a pain, a motivation to sell, but majority of people, I think they, you might not think that they're doing their research, but even after that first conversation of talking to them, you scheduling a walkthrough, they're still doing research, because then a lot of times they'll be like, oh, well, I noticed, other companies actually do the same thing that you do. Like, what's different there? And I mean, usually my response is, well, you're not going to be working with me.
Correct. That's exactly
that's the biggest difference. But I think, having like the psychology with working with homeowners and to gain their trust, that's always kind of a interesting aspect of this real estate game. For me, I enjoy that, because you're just trying to show them that you're just another person just like them. You're there to help them. You're not there to take advantage of them or anything like that. And providing with as much information, I think, helps them out, because it gives them all the information that they need, where they might not need to go and maybe search on their own. Now they still might, which is fine, but they're going to still be finding the same results and the same answers that we're providing them, which then
it
shows
builds
them,
trust.
Yeah, it builds the trust, because they're like, oh, these guys weren't lying. This is actually true, that, my house is at this value, if I were to sell it as is versus listing or anything like that. So, it's kind of interesting with a lot of the times, I think we underestimate a lot of the sellers. And I think it just might be because, we kind of look at numbers and everything like that, and not so much, the personal aspect that, it's just, this is another human being just like you and me. And I know for me personally, I do a lot of research, and I like, even if someone tells me, this is what we're doing here and here, I still want to do my own research and verify and validate,
is it legitimate? Legit. And then, so I think about that, because like at Friendsgiving on Saturday, when we had that, one of the people there, one of our friends, he had said, like, he always had this negative stigma, and he's same age as us, like right around 30 years old, about sales. And there is a stigma about sales, and people do not like to be sold. And I think when people are pushy, or they're trying to get an answer right away or whatever, and it's in certain cases it's needed, because you want to inform the owner, but you also want to make sure you're acting in their best interests, and they might just be confused, and they don't know the steps in the process. So the more that you can walk them through, the more that you can inform them, the more comfortable they'll be. But what he said is, and what it has me thinking of, is a more consultative approach to sales, which is generally what we take. But I think as the current population, like our generation, starts to age, and then if we keep doing this for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, all those people are going to the internet to get their resources or whatever new technology is out there. Versus like our people our parents' age, they're still going to the internet for a lot of the resources.
Yeah, they are.
Like, they might not necessarily trust a postcard that they receive in the mail, but they're going to go check you out. They're going to check on the online social profiles. They're going to check all these different things.
Reviews and everything like that.
Correct. Prior to even considering to give a call. And that's where, again, if the message matches across every single platform, and you're actually acting in the best interest of the owner, fantastic. It builds a lot of trust. Versus when investors go out, like I was talking to a lady yesterday actually, and she's like, "Yeah, I see on Zillow my house is worth 200 and some thousand. I'm asking 175." I'm like, "Okay, that sounds," in whatever we went over repairs, that sort of thing. I'm like, "That sounds pretty legitimate." Right. I said, "It sounds like something we would be interested in, given that, and as you know, of course, we're a company, we need to make a profit." Right. But it sounds like you already calculated that in. She's like, "Yeah, I think so." So I set up an appointment with her. We're going to go check out that property later this week. Okay. But if I would have said, "Hey, like you're way up." Zillow's, like, if I start coming at her with information, Zillow isn't anything that's super accurate or whatever, then it starts crumpling the rapport that you're trying to build. And then it's like, well, the trust factor is completely gone. And versus reiterating that, hey, Zillow is probably pretty accurate on what it's worth. Of course, we'll verify it when we come in person, see if it needs any more repairs. Then we can provide you a legitimate idea on where we might be at. So I don't know. I just think the more you can do to reassure someone and provide them with value, I think the more sales you'll eventually end up getting. And kind of bringing this full circle is, okay, what resources can I create now on those slow days, on those non-busy days, that might make an owner feel comfortable or more comfortable making a decision? So,
and one thing I was just, as you were talking there, was I was thinking, the biggest thing too is you don't want to just go ahead or if an owner's telling you, okay, yeah, my house is worth this on Zillow, and I saw that the house, 2 blocks down sold for 250, so I want to get around that 250, whatever. You can't just come out and say like, well, that's not going to happen. Like, you're wrong. Like, you can't just tell them, like, you can't just.
But people do.
Yeah, they do, and a lot of salesmen, even like car salesmen. I'm not saying car salesmen are bad salesmen.
Just has a bad reputation for
it
that.
It does, yeah. But there are times where people are just saying like, no, that's not it. You don't want that. Like, it's like you can say it in a better way. And I think at least what I do is I'm like, okay, so that house 2 blocks down sold for 250. Is that house similar to yours? And a lot of times they'll say, well, I mean, it has 2 more bedrooms or another bedroom and a bathroom. It's like, well, that's, looking at it from that standpoint, like there's a reason why then that house is worth
correct
or sold for a higher amount. What we look at and what all other realtors look at is similar houses, similar, style and everything like that. Like
bedrooms,
that's how
bathrooms.
We find the exact, kind of comps, and explain it to them that way. And you're not telling them that they're wrong, like flat out, and move on to the move on in the conversation. But you're just kind of educating them, like, this is actually how we look at it, and this is where we're coming from. And a lot of times they're like, okay, that makes sense. Maybe it's, I don't need that 250. It's not actually worth that. And then they, want to know a little bit more on what our thoughts are and what our insights are. So I think, just being able to not just do a harsh correction, tell them like, you're not right, and that's that.
Because no one wants to be told that. Like, realistically, it's like if we're having a conversation and then even right now, it's like, no, I don't think that's. Then it comes off a lot more harsh. In not necessarily that you don't want to offend people, but you also want to take into consideration what their thoughts are, because their experiences are a hell of a lot different than what ours have been. So that's just and
not everybody, I guess, might be in the right state of mind where they want to be, I guess, educated on the things that they're saying might be wrong. So you have to be kind of careful like with that. But I think what leads up to maybe that to educate them, part of like the sales process is the initial part, which I think is the most important, is your first initial interaction with them. And I think being just coming off and being friendly and being like another friend for them, like basically just trying to have them almost teach you something that they do in life and everything like that. And we've talked about this plenty of times where, looking around when you first initially walk in, if you see photo of them holding up a big fish or something like that and talking about fishing and just getting into, topics that they're interested in. And usually we both fish and
correct.
hunt and everything. So like those two things are very easy to relate with other people, and relating to them on something other than selling their house can be a huge, basically starting point, because you're already at that friendly level and people just want to do business with people they like and friends that they like. So I think setting that up in the initial, conversation definitely helps out quite a bit. Now, what can we do on the marketing side to do that? That might be something to kind of look into.
Correct.
Is there something that, that we can have out there that shows that we're similar and just like anybody else and have the same kind of interests? Now, it's not going to work every single time, but whether it's having a picture of, family and having a dog on there and everything, people, love to see, families that have dogs or cats or stuff like that they can relate to.
And I think the more you can relate as a human being versus a business or a company, the better it is. And that's where like there's the personal branding component of, hey, post as much content as you physically are able and just stay consistent. Try and stay consistent, because that's ultimately the most difficult thing. You get tied up with other shit that's going on and you just don't know what to do. But I think the more we can stay on top of those things, the better. And even like the last thing, and I'll end with this so we don't run too long, but I was on an appointment recently. The owners generally want to know, like, hey, do you do you actually have interest in my place? Although you're coming out to take a look at it, it's like telling them, hey, yeah, this is actually something that we are definitely interested in. Now, of course, we have to come to an agreement on price. Like that's a very important thing for you. It's a very important thing for us. But if we can come to an agreement, walk them through the next steps, because a lot of these owners just have no idea on what the sales process looks like. And it's, for us, we're used to it, but for the average person, they don't know what to do. And they want that helping hand, walking them through every single next step, over communicating, being right there throughout the entire transaction, that they know they can trust you and they want to move forward with you. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, hey, what makes you different than the next person?
Yeah.
Me. Like that's the biggest difference. Like it's still an as-is offer. It's still all these things, but you going that route, you don't get the chance to work with me. And I know for a fact that we are the best in the business, and I fully believe that. And I don't think someone will be serviced as highly going to a different company. So
yeah,
it is what it is there. But any final thoughts before we end this?
I would just say that the biggest thing too is, make sure you answer all the questions that they might have, and over provide, information that when you leave the house or, hang up the phone after the conversation, you gave them all the information where they're not really questioning anything. They're not going to leave and be like, oh, well, how does the rest of the process work after I sign this contract? Like, give them all the details and lay it all out. So then when you do leave, there's no questions that are still rattling in their head.
Correct.
But yeah, that's kind of all I have right there. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys watching, listening. Hopefully you like this content. It's just Joe and I here today. We have some more episodes that we're recording in the very, very near future. So those will be dropping consistently every Tuesday and Friday. But if you guys liked it, comment down below, hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next episode.